In a small town nestled between rolling hills and vibrant fields, Westwood High School stood as a beacon of learning and hope for its students. The school was known for its diverse population and commitment to fostering an inclusive environment. However, beneath this facade of unity lay deep-seated issues that would soon come to light. Among the students was a bright and ambitious young girl named Maya Johnson. At just 16, Maya was already making waves with her exceptional writing skills. Her passion for storytelling was evident in every essay she penned, each one reflecting her unique perspective as a black girl navigating a predominantly white school. Maya's words had the power to captivate and inspire, often drawing from her own experiences of joy, struggle, and resilience. Maya's English teacher, Mrs. Thompson, had a reputation for being strict but fair. She was known to push her students to excel, often encouraging them to dig deeper into their thoughts and express themselves authentically. However, there were whispers among students about Mrs. Thompson's biases, comments she made in passing that hinted at a lack of understanding or appreciation for cultures different from her own. On an ordinary Tuesday morning, the classroom buzzed with excitement as students prepared for a writing competition that promised national recognition. The theme was Voices of Change, and Maya felt an electric thrill as she imagined her words resonating with others across the country. She had spent countless hours crafting her essay, pouring her heart into every sentence, determined to share her truth. As the bell rang, signaling the start of class, Maya took a deep breath and settled into her seat. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating her notebook filled with notes and drafts. She glanced around at her classmates. Some were busy chatting about their plans for the weekend, while others were frantically scribbling down last-minute ideas. Mrs. Thompson entered the room with her usual brisk demeanor, but today there was an air of tension that seemed to hang over her like a dark cloud. As she began discussing the competition, Maya noticed that Mrs. Thompson's tone shifted when she addressed certain students. There was an unmistakable favoritism in how she praised some essays while dismissing others without much thought. "Maya," Mrs. Thompson called out suddenly, breaking Maya's concentration. "I hope you've been working on your piece. I expect great things from you." Maya smiled nervously, but felt a flicker of doubt ignite within her. She had always respected Mrs. Thompson, but couldn't shake off the feeling that her teacher viewed her through a lens tinted by bias. As class continued, Mrs. Thompson began reading excerpts from various essays aloud, a practice meant to inspire students, but one that quickly turned sour when she reached Maya's work. "This one is from Maya Johnson," Mrs. Thompson announced, with a hint of condescension in her voice. "Let's see if it lives up to the hype." Maya's heart raced as she listened intently while Mrs. Thompson read aloud from her essay about systemic racism and its impact on communities of color, a topic deeply personal to Maya, and one she had approached with both vulnerability and strength. But instead of appreciating the depth of Maya's writing, Mrs. Thompson's tone grew increasingly critical as she reached particularly poignant lines about discrimination and identity. "While this is certainly passionate," she said with an exaggerated sigh, "I wonder if you're trying too hard to make a point here. It feels somewhat dramatic." Laughter erupted from some corners of the classroom, snickers and whispers that echoed through Maya's mind like daggers piercing her confidence. The laughter stung more than anything. It was not just directed at her words, but at who she was as a person. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks as she sat frozen in disbelief. How could Mrs. Thompson not see the importance of what she was saying? This wasn't just an essay. It was part of her identity, a reflection of her struggles and triumphs. "Maybe next time you should consider writing about something lighter," Mrs. Thompson suggested dismissively, before moving on to another student's work. The bell rang shortly after, signaling the end of class, but Maya remained seated, staring blankly at her notebook filled with inked dreams, now overshadowed by humiliation. As students filed out, some offered sympathetic glances while others whispered behind their hands, feeling crushed under the weight of public shame. Maya finally gathered her belongings and stepped into the hallway where laughter echoed around her like an unwelcome reminder of what had just transpired. "Hey, are you okay?" asked Jasmine, one of Maya's closest friends who had witnessed the entire scene unfold. Maya forced a smile, but could only shake her head slightly in response. I don't understand why she didn't get it." Jasmine frowned sympathetically, but encouraged Maya not to let it get to her head too much. "You know your worth. Don't let anyone take that away from you." As they walked toward lunch together, Maya couldn't shake off the feeling of defeat that clung to her like a shadow. But deep down inside, something else stirred, a flicker of determination ignited by injustice. That night, after reflecting on everything that had happened during the day, Maya sat down at her desk once more and opened up a blank document on her laptop. She began typing furiously, not just about what had happened in class, but about everything it represented. Resilience in the face of adversity, strength in vulnerability, and hope for change. Little did she know that this very essay would soon take on a life of its own, transforming from mere words on a page into an anthem for those who felt silenced. The public shaming. The following day at Westwood High School dawned bright and clear, but for Maya Johnson, the sun felt muted behind a veil of anxiety. As she prepared for school, she couldn't shake off the humiliation from the previous day. The laughter of her classmates echoed in her mind, and she felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. Would Mrs. Thompson address her essay again? Would she face more ridicule? Maya arrived at school early, hoping to find solace in the quiet halls before the chaos of the day began. She took a deep breath as she walked through the familiar corridors, each step heavy with uncertainty. The walls were adorned with colorful posters promoting school events and achievements, but today they felt like reminders of everything she was struggling against. As students trickled into the building, Maya noticed Jasmine waiting for her by their lockers. "Hey, you're here early," Jasmine exclaimed, her bright smile a stark contrast to Maya's somber mood. "Yeah, I just needed some time to think," Maya replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Jasmine tilted her head, sensing something was off. "You know Mrs. Thompson was out of line yesterday, right? You should talk to someone about it." Maya shrugged, unsure of how to respond. "I don't know if it'll make a difference. It feels like no one really cares about what I have to say." "Don't say that. Your voice matters," Jasmine insisted. "You're an amazing writer. That essay was powerful." Maya appreciated Jasmine's encouragement, but felt a wave of doubt wash over her. "Maybe it was too powerful," she murmured. "Maybe I should have toned it down." As they walked to class together, Maya's heart raced at the thought of facing Mrs. Thompson again. When they entered the classroom, the atmosphere felt charged with anticipation. Students were whispering among themselves, and Maya could sense that many had already heard about her essay and the teacher's harsh critique. Mrs. Thompson arrived shortly after the bell rang, her expression unreadable as she took her place at the front of the room. "Good morning, class," she began, scanning the room with an air of authority. "Today, we're going to continue discussing your essays and prepare for the upcoming competition." Maya's stomach twisted as she braced herself for what might come next. Would Mrs. Thompson bring up her work again? Would she use it as an example of what not to do? "Before we dive in," Mrs. Thompson continued, "I want to address something important." Her gaze landed on Maya, and a hush fell over the classroom. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she felt all eyes on her. "Yesterday, we discussed various essays from our class," Mrs. Thompson said slowly. "I want to emphasize that writing is an art form that requires sensitivity and awareness of your audience." Maya's breath caught in her throat as she realized where this was heading. "I received feedback about my comments yesterday," Mrs. Thompson continued, "and while I appreciate your passion, I must remind you that there are ways to express your ideas without being overly dramatic or confrontational. A murmur rippled through the classroom as students exchanged glances. Some looked sympathetic, while others appeared amused by Mrs. Thompson's words. "Writing about difficult topics is important," Mrs. Thompson added dismissively. "But we must also consider how our words can be perceived by others." Maya felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but fought them back fiercely. She wanted to stand up and defend herself, to explain that her words were not meant to provoke, but to enlighten. Instead, she sat frozen in her seat, feeling small and powerless. "Let's move on," Mrs. Thompson said abruptly, turning away from Maya as if dismissing her entirely. The rest of the class dragged on in a blur for Maya. She couldn't focus on anything except the weight of shame pressing down on her shoulders. Her classmates whispered among themselves. Some were supportive, while others indulged in cruel jokes at her expense. At lunch, Maya sat with Jasmine and a few other friends who tried to lighten the mood with laughter and chatter about weekend plans and upcoming movies. But Maya found it hard to engage. All she could think about was how Mrs. Thompson's words had cut deep into her spirit. "Are you sure you don't want to talk to Principal Harris?" Jasmine asked gently, after noticing Maya's distant expression. "I don't know," Maya replied quietly. "What good would it do? It's just one teacher's opinion." "But it's not just one opinion. It's about how teachers should treat their students," Jasmine insisted passionately. "I know," Maya sighed, feeling torn between wanting to speak out and fearing further backlash. After lunch, when they returned to class for their writing workshop session, Maya noticed that some students were whispering and pointing at her again. She could feel their stares burning into her skin, like hot coals. "All right, everyone," Mrs. Thompson announced as she clapped her hands together for attention. "Today we're going to workshop our essays in pairs." Maya felt a wave of dread wash over her as she paired up with Lisa, a girl known for being particularly critical and often condescending towards others' work. As they exchanged essays for feedback, Lisa glanced at Maya's paper with raised eyebrows before reading aloud a particularly poignant line about systemic injustice. "It is not enough to be silent. We must raise our voices against oppression." "Wow," Lisa scoffed after reading it aloud. "This sounds like you're trying too hard to be profound or something." Maya clenched her fists under the table but remained silent as Lisa continued critiquing every aspect of her writing, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Maybe if you wrote something more relatable instead of this woke nonsense," Lisa trailed off mockingly. Maya felt tears welling up again but fought them back fiercely this time. She wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break down in front of them. Just then, Jasmine interjected from across the table. "Hey, that's not fair. Maya put a lot of thought into this essay." Lisa rolled her eyes dramatically but didn't respond further, as Mrs. Thompson called for everyone's attention once more. "All right, class," Mrs. Thompson said with an air of authority, once again looming over them like a dark cloud ready to burst. "Let's share some insights from our workshops." As students began sharing their experiences, Maya listened intently but felt increasingly isolated from the conversation. Her words seemed to hang heavy in the air around her, while laughter erupted from other corners of the room where students shared lighter topics. Finally, when it was time for Maya to share feedback on Lisa's essay, a piece filled with superficial observations, she hesitated before speaking up. "I think your essay has potential," Maya began cautiously, but then added firmly, "but I also think it lacks depth and authenticity compared to what we've been discussing in class." Gasps echoed around them as students turned their heads toward Maya in surprise. This wasn't like her at all. She had always been polite and accommodating. Lisa shot back defensively. "Well, maybe if you weren't so busy trying to be deep, you'd understand what makes good writing." Maya felt adrenaline surging through her veins. This was no longer just about defending herself. It was about standing up for what she believed in. "I'm not trying to be anything other than honest," Maya exclaimed passionately, now that she had found her voice amidst all this chaos surrounding them. The classroom fell silent as everyone turned their attention toward them. Some looked shocked, while others seemed intrigued by this unexpected confrontation unfolding before them. Mrs. Thompson cleared her throat loudly before stepping in. "All right, let's refocus here." But before she could continue directing traffic back onto safer waters where no one would rock any boats too much anymore, Maya spoke up once more. "I just want everyone here, including you, Ms. Thompson, to understand that our voices matter. We all have stories worth telling." The boldness behind those words resonated deeply within every student present. Even those who had once laughed at or belittled Maya now sat stunned into silence by this newfound courage radiating from someone they had underestimated until now. Though shaken by everything happening around them, the laughter earlier still echoing painfully through every corner inside, there was something liberating about finally speaking out against oppression, even if only within these four walls as class ended that day. Students filed out quietly, leaving behind an air thick with tension, lingering long after they departed, their minds buzzing with thoughts stirred up by what had transpired during those moments filled with raw emotion, unlike anything any had witnessed before. Maya walked out alongside Jasmine, feeling lighter, despite everything weighing heavily upon them both still. They shared knowing glances filled with understanding, beyond mere words, spoken aloud. Little did they know, this moment would mark a turning point not only for themselves, but also for many others who would soon find inspiration through witnessing such bravery displayed right before their eyes. The essay submission. The day after the confrontation in class, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. The shame she had experienced was still fresh, but it was now intertwined with a determination to prove herself, not just to Mrs. Thompson or her classmates, but to herself. She had always known that her voice mattered, and now she was ready to amplify it. As she sat at her desk that evening, the soft glow of her laptop illuminated her face. The essay she had poured her heart into was more than just a piece of writing. It was a reflection of her identity and experiences. Titled Voices Unheard, it encapsulated the struggles faced by marginalized communities and the importance of speaking out against injustice. Maya took a deep breath and began revising her essay. She wanted it to be perfect, not just for the competition, but as a testament to everything she believed in. She recalled the stories her grandmother had shared with her about growing up during the civil rights movement, about the power of words to inspire change. Those stories had always resonated with Maya, fueling her passion for writing and social justice. As she typed, memories flooded back. Moments when she had felt invisible in a room full of voices, times when she had witnessed friends being treated unfairly because of their race or background. Each memory added depth to her essay, transforming it into a powerful narrative that demanded attention. Maya worked late into the night, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and inspiration. With each paragraph, she felt lighter, as if shedding the weight of others' judgments. She wrote about resilience and hope, weaving in anecdotes from her own life and those around her. The words flowed effortlessly as she crafted an argument that was both personal and universal. When she finally hit save, a wave of relief washed over her. She had done it. She had created something meaningful that reflected who she was and what she stood for. But as the excitement faded, anxiety crept in again. What if Mrs. Thompson dismissed this piece too? What if it didn't resonate with anyone? The next day at school, Maya arrived early once more, clutching a printed copy of her essay tightly in her hands like a lifeline. She found Jasmine waiting for her at their usual spot by the lockers. "Hey, did you finish your essay?" Jasmine asked eagerly. "Yeah," Maya replied, holding up the paper with a mix of pride and apprehension. "I'm going to submit it today." Jasmine's eyes sparkled with excitement. "That's amazing. I can't wait to read it." As they walked to class together, Maya felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. Would this be the moment everything changed? Would Mrs. Thompson recognize the effort and passion behind her words? When they entered the classroom, Mrs. Thompson was already there, reviewing papers at her desk. Maya's heart raced as she approached the front of the room to submit her essay. "Good morning, Maya," Mrs. Thompson said, without looking up initially. "Good morning," Maya replied softly, placing the essay on the desk before stepping back. Mrs. Thompson finally glanced up, raising an eyebrow, as she noticed the title on the cover page. "Voices Unheard?" "Interesting title," she said coolly. Maya nodded but didn't say anything more as she returned to her seat. The anticipation hung heavily in the air as other students filed in and settled down. Throughout class, Maya couldn't focus on anything but the essay sitting on Mrs. Thompson's desk, the culmination of all her thoughts and feelings laid bare for judgment, once again. As they moved through various writing exercises, Mrs. Thompson occasionally glanced at Maya's paper but didn't comment further. Each glance sent butterflies swirling in Maya's stomach. Would this be another moment of public shaming? Finally, at the end of class, Mrs. Thompson announced that they would have time for peer reviews tomorrow, a chance for students to share their essays with one another before final submissions were due. Maya felt both excited and terrified at the prospect of sharing her work again. Would this time be different? Would she find support among her peers? After school that day, Maya met Jasmine at their favorite cafe, a cozy little spot known for its warm atmosphere and delicious pastries. As they settled into a booth with steaming mugs of hot chocolate in front of them, Jasmine looked at Maya expectantly. "So, how do you feel about your essay?" Jasmine asked. "I'm nervous," Maya admitted honestly. "What if everyone thinks it's too much? What if they don't get it?" "Maya," Jasmine said firmly, "you have to trust yourself. Your voice is important. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Maya smiled faintly at Jasmine's encouragement, but still felt a knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. The next day arrived quickly. Students shuffled into class with varying levels of enthusiasm for sharing their essays. As Maya prepared herself for peer review, she noticed how some students exchanged glances filled with curiosity about what she would present after everything that had happened recently. When it came time for Maya to share her work with Lisa, her assigned partner, she took a deep breath and began reading aloud from Voices Unheard. As she spoke about systemic racism and personal experiences that shaped her understanding of injustice, something shifted in Lisa's demeanor. At first, Lisa listened with crossed arms and an unimpressed expression. But as Maya continued reading powerful lines about resilience and hope amidst adversity, the walls around Lisa seemed to crack slightly. "Wow," Lisa finally said when Maya finished reading. "I didn't know you felt this way." Maya blinked in surprise. There was no sarcasm or mockery in Lisa's voice this time, only genuine curiosity. I guess I didn't really think about it like that before," Lisa admitted hesitantly. Maya felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Perhaps sharing this essay would lead to understanding rather than ridicule after all. "Thank you for sharing," Lisa said softly, after contemplating some more before offering constructive feedback instead of criticism, a refreshing change from what Maya had expected earlier. As other students began sharing their essays around them, some tackling lighter topics while others delved into deeper issues, Maya listened intently while feeling increasingly empowered by witnessing how different voices could resonate so profoundly within one another. When class ended that day, students filed out buzzing with excitement over what they'd learned during peer reviews. Maya lingered behind, momentarily catching Mrs. Thompson's eye, who nodded approvingly toward her direction. "Good work today," Mrs. Thompson said quietly, before returning back toward grading papers again, leaving behind an air filled with unspoken acknowledgement lingering between them both. Later that evening, after school ended, Maya returned home feeling lighter than ever before, despite everything weighing heavily upon them still. It wasn't just about winning competitions anymore. It was about finding strength through vulnerability. With renewed determination, coursing through every fiber inside herself now, she began drafting revisions based on feedback received during peer reviews while reflecting upon how far she'd come since first submitting those initial drafts weeks ago. As days turned into weeks, leading up toward competition, deadlines approaching quickly now, the anticipation built steadily within every student eager for recognition, while also yearning for validation beyond mere accolades awarded upon them all. Little did they know that this journey would soon become something much greater than any single award could ever represent. It would become an anthem not only for themselves, but also echoing throughout countless others who'd faced similar struggles along their own paths towards self-discovery. Award announcement. As the weeks rolled on, the atmosphere at Westwood High School shifted. Excitement buzzed in the air as students prepared for the upcoming writing competition. Posters adorned the walls, announcing the event and encouraging everyone to submit their best work. Maya felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. She had poured her heart into her essay, but would it be enough to stand out among so many talented writers? In the days leading up to the announcement, Maya found herself reflecting on her journey. The public shaming she had endured felt like a distant memory now, overshadowed by the support she had received from her peers. Lisa had surprised her with genuine feedback during their peer review session, and other classmates had reached out to express admiration for her courage in sharing such a personal piece. It was a reminder that her voice mattered and that there were others who understood her struggles. On the day of the award announcement, Maya arrived at school early, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and dread. The auditorium was filled with students, teachers, and parents, all gathered to celebrate creativity and expression through writing. The atmosphere was electric, and Maya could feel the energy pulsing around her as she took a seat with Jasmine. "Are you ready?" Jasmine asked, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I think so," Maya replied, though she felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. "I just hope they recognize what we've all put into our essays." As the principal took to the stage to kick off the ceremony, Maya's heart pounded in her chest. He spoke about the importance of storytelling and how each essay represented a unique voice that contributed to the fabric of their community. The audience listened intently, nodding along as he emphasized how writing could inspire change. Maya couldn't help but feel proud of what she had accomplished. No matter what happened today, she had stood up for herself and shared her truth with others. That alone felt like a victory. The principal began announcing various categories for awards: Best Narrative, Best Poetry, Best Nonfiction, and with each name called, Maya felt a wave of anticipation wash over her. Finally, it was time for the most coveted award: Best Overall Essay. "And now," the principal said dramatically, "the moment we've all been waiting for. The award for Best Overall Essay goes to Maya Johnson for Voices Unheard." The auditorium erupted into applause as Maya's heart soared. She could hardly believe it. All those hours spent writing and revising had culminated in this moment. A mix of disbelief and joy washed over her as she stood up slowly, feeling every eye in the room on her. Jasmine cheered loudly from their seats, waving her arms enthusiastically while other students clapped and shouted encouragement. Maya made her way to the front of the stage, her legs feeling like jelly beneath her. As she approached the podium to accept her award, a beautiful glass trophy shaped like an open book, she caught sight of Mrs. Thompson standing at the edge of the stage. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Mrs. Thompson's expression was unreadable. Was it pride? Regret? Maya couldn't tell as she took a deep breath and stepped up to speak. "Thank you so much," Maya began, trying to steady her voice despite its tremor. "This means more to me than I can express." She paused for a moment to collect herself before continuing. "When I wrote Voices Unheard, I wanted to share my experiences and those of others who often feel invisible," she said passionately. "I believe that our stories matter. They shape who we are and how we see the world." The audience listened intently as she spoke about resilience in the face of adversity and the importance of using one's voice to advocate for change. With each word, Maya felt more empowered. This was not just about winning an award. It was about inspiring others to find their voices too. "I want to thank everyone who supported me along this journey," she concluded, glancing at Jasmine, who beamed back at her proudly. "And I hope that we all continue to share our stories, because together we can create a world where everyone is heard." As she stepped down from the podium amid thunderous applause, Maya felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over her. This was beyond anything she had imagined. It was validation not only for her work, but for every student who had ever felt marginalized or silenced. After the ceremony concluded, students rushed up to congratulate Maya, some offering hugs while others simply smiled warmly at her newfound recognition. Even Lisa approached with an unexpected grin. "Congratulations! I didn't think you'd actually win," Lisa admitted sheepishly, but genuinely this time. "Thanks," Maya replied, feeling a sense of camaraderie growing between them that hadn't existed before. As students mingled around snacks provided by the school, celebrating not just Maya's victory but also their collective achievements, Maya spotted Mrs. Thompson standing off to one side, watching everything unfold quietly. Gathering her courage once more, Maya approached Mrs. Thompson cautiously, feeling both nervous yet determined. "Thank you for pushing me to be better." Mrs. Thompson looked surprised, but then softened slightly. "You did well today, Maya. I'm proud of your growth." Maya nodded appreciatively. Perhaps there was room for understanding after all, even amidst past conflicts. Later that evening, when Maya returned home, the trophy shining brightly on her desk, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she'd come since that fateful day when Mrs. Thompson had publicly shamed her in class. Now standing tall with newfound confidence, she realized that this journey wasn't just about winning awards. It was about finding strength through vulnerability while inspiring others along their own paths toward self-discovery. As days turned into weeks following this pivotal moment, Maya began receiving messages from classmates who expressed how much they related to what she'd written about systemic injustice while sharing their own stories too. It became clear that Voices Unheard had sparked conversations throughout Westwood High School, leading students toward greater awareness surrounding issues often overlooked before. With each new dialogue ignited, Maya felt invigorated knowing that by sharing her truth, she'd opened doors for others seeking validation within themselves too. Little did they all know that this small ripple effect would soon grow into something much larger than any single essay could ever encapsulate. It would become an anthem echoing across countless hearts, yearning for change, reflection, and impact. In the weeks following her victory at the writing competition, Maya Johnson found herself at the center of a whirlwind of change, not just within her own life, but throughout Westwood High School. The conversations sparked by her essay, Voices Unheard, began to ripple through the student body, igniting discussions about race, identity, and the power of storytelling. Maya was approached by various clubs and organizations within the school, each eager to collaborate on initiatives that promoted inclusivity and understanding. The student council invited her to speak at their next meeting about her experiences and how they could create a more supportive environment for all students. It was an opportunity she never anticipated but felt compelled to embrace. As she prepared for her speech, Maya reflected on how far she had come since that fateful day in Mrs. Thompson's classroom. The public shaming had been painful, but it had also served as a catalyst for growth. She realized that her voice mattered, not just in her writing, but in her actions and advocacy for others who felt marginalized. On the day of the student council meeting, Maya stood before her peers in the auditorium, a mix of nerves and excitement coursing through her veins. The room was filled with students from diverse backgrounds, all eager to hear what she had to say. As she looked out at their faces, she felt a surge of determination. "Thank you for having me here today," Maya began, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her stomach. I want to talk about something that's been on my mind since I won the writing competition, something that goes beyond just one essay." She shared her journey openly, recounting the challenges she faced as a black girl in a predominantly white school. She spoke about the importance of representation and how vital it was for every student to feel seen and heard. As she spoke passionately about inclusivity and empathy, she could see nods of agreement from her audience. "Each of us has a story," Maya continued, "and when we share those stories, we create connections that can bridge divides between us. It's not just about winning awards. It's about using our voices to advocate for change." After her speech concluded, the room erupted into applause. Students approached her afterward with gratitude in their eyes, expressing how inspired they felt by her words. Some shared their own stories of struggle and resilience, creating an atmosphere of solidarity that Maya had longed for. In the following weeks, Maya collaborated with various student groups to launch initiatives aimed at fostering dialogue around race and identity. They organized workshops where students could share their experiences in a safe space, encouraging vulnerability while building understanding among peers. One particularly impactful event was a panel discussion titled "Voices of Change," where students from different backgrounds shared their stories and engaged in meaningful conversations about systemic racism and its effects on their lives. The turnout exceeded expectations. Students filled the auditorium, eager to listen and learn. Maya sat on the panel alongside classmates who had once been strangers but now felt like allies in this journey toward greater awareness. As they shared their experiences, some heartbreaking while others uplifting, the audience listened intently, captivated by the raw honesty displayed before them. The event sparked further discussions within classrooms as teachers began incorporating lessons on diversity and inclusion into their curricula. Mrs. Thompson even approached Maya after one session with an idea. "I'd like to create a unit dedicated to exploring cultural narratives through writing," she proposed. Maya was taken aback by Mrs. Thompson's willingness to change. It was a testament to how far they had both come since that initial confrontation. "I'd love to help with that," Maya replied enthusiastically. As spring turned into summer, Maya found herself reflecting on everything that had transpired over the past few months. She had not only grown as a writer, but also as an advocate for herself and others. Her essay had become a catalyst for change, not just for herself, but for an entire community seeking understanding amidst diversity. One afternoon, while sitting in her room surrounded by notes from various initiatives they'd launched, Maya picked up her trophy from the writing competition once more, admiring its gleaming surface. She realized it represented more than just personal achievement. It symbolized hope for many who felt unheard. With renewed determination coursing through every fiber inside herself now, Maya decided it was time to take things further. She reached out to local organizations dedicated to social justice, expressing interest in collaborating on community outreach programs aimed at empowering youth voices across town. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Soon enough, Maya found herself leading workshops where young people could express themselves creatively through writing, while also learning about advocacy techniques they could utilize within their own communities. As summer rolled around, the impact of these initiatives began rippling beyond Westwood High School itself, drawing attention from local media outlets interested in highlighting youth activism within their region. Maya's story became a beacon of inspiration, a reminder that one voice could indeed spark significant change. Even amidst adversity faced along life's journey, reflecting back on everything she'd experienced, from public shaming to award-winning recognition, Maya understood now more than ever how crucial it was for individuals everywhere to find strength within themselves while uplifting those around them too. The journey wasn't over. There were still battles left to fight, but with newfound courage igniting every step taken forward, Maya knew they would continue forging paths toward brighter futures together. As she sat down one last time at her desk before heading out into summer sunshine, Maya opened up a blank document on her laptop, readying herself once again to pen another chapter filled with hope, resilience, strength, because this was only just beginning.